All right, awesome Goldwing startup video number 2. I'm going to talk about what I did to build this bike, and I'll tell you what companies and products that I used to make this build. Quick disclosure: I'm not endorsing anyone here. You know, this is just my journey. Companies that I like to work with that work well for me. Make your own decision. I'm going to go through the complete build, all the modifications I made. We'll crank up the bike, and then I'll make another video of the bike going down the road. So let's take a look at it. You'll notice, first of all, that the engine is black and frame is silver. Most bikes obviously are the other way around, so I thought I'd try something different here. The tank is Daytona blue. I buy my paint from TCP Global, it's a California company, mail order internet. They've got a great selection of paint. So this is a acrylic urethane paint, 2-stage. I used satin clear coat, except for the engine block. That has a high gloss clear on it. So, you know, that's the basic look of the bike. For those of you who know Goldwings really well, you'll see there are a lot of modifications going on here. But I named the bike Ruffian, so the theme is a thoroughbred horse. Ruffian was a filly that ran in the mid-70s. She won every single race she ever entered, except her very last race, which was a match race, and she broke down, had to be euthanized. It's quite an incredible story, so I wanted to go with that. You'll notice 16.2 hands on the tank. That refers to her height at her withers, which is a measure of her size. So thought that was an appropriate name to give this bike. All right, let's move on to the front end. Okay, so looking at the front end, I've got inverted forks on this bike. I like the look of that. This is forks off of a 2014 CBR 600R. So the forks are 30 years newer technology. The bike is a Honda Goldwing 1984 GL 1200, so it's 30 years difference between that front end and the frame. I think it's a great look. It was really difficult to make it work. Went with All Balls Racing has conversion kits, bearing conversion kits, and that allows you to match this front end to the frame. Problem is, the neck of the frame is an inch longer than the center shaft of the triple tree. So I had to cut that, put an inch spacer in there, and I'll show you some more details on that later, but then I had to fabricate a stainless steel shaft to go down the middle to hold it all together. Lost a lot of turning radius, and the bike handling has changed a bit. She goes down the road just fine, but that was a huge change in the bike. So aesthetically it looks great. On a practical sense, I'm not sure I would recommend doing that modification. LED headlight, just fabricated a little bracket, and so there's no headlight bucket here whatsoever. Thought that was just a real simple, clean look. Not everyone's gonna like that, but these are all OEM brake calipers. Over here you have a vintage fire extinguisher canister that I cleaned up and painted. This is the overflow for the radiator, stock radiator, sitting right here. So one of the difficult issues also is mating all of your controls into the ignition and the frame of this bike. And I'll talk about that a little more also. Here's the key. Went with new spark plug wires. And also you'll see the cutouts here. You've got your cam belt and wheels. And when the engine's running, it spins around. It looks kind of cool. So I cut this out. Just thought that's a nice touch. So that's the front end. Let's move over to the side of the bike. Okay, looking at the side here, my upper triple tree is a piece made by Cognito Motor. It's a really nice, clean piece. I don't have my ignition key up here. I've got it down here now, so that the top of the triple tree is really clean. And then there's a Moto Gadget display, and I'll show that to you some more. So those of you who know the Goldwing, on the bike, this is a air tank. I mean, it looks like a fuel tank on the original bike, but it's not. You have access to your fuel tank back here. You've got some storage space in the tank. I went with I want to say mid-late 70s CB 550 tank. I thought it was a really good-looking tank. It's a clean tank. I love Honda's tanks. Wanted to stay with a Honda tank on a Honda bike, and it has a compartment you open up and your fuel fills below it. So modified this tank to fit the frame. The original tank sat back here and used a fuel pump to bring the fuel up to the carburetors. Additionally, your carburetors connected to a box, an air box that sat underneath this tank. And I wanted to do away with all of that. This is the what is left of the original air box. I cut out sections of it so that I could still bolt the carburetors together and hold them in place. But also you'll see back here is where the throttle linkage mounted. So it would have sat this way underneath the tank. Your throttle linkage is there. Choke linkage sat right here, and then you had arms extending to each one of the carbs. So losing this piece meant a lot of modification, but I'm glad I did it actually. Let me pause and get a closer shot of that. Okay, so I hope you can see in here. This is 3/4 inch bar, square bar. This is mild steel bar. And I fabricated this up, welded on a riser, did a lot of careful measuring, and so now the throttle linkage is connected to that. I think it's, it's nice and clean. It gave me space for these K&N pod filters, so I had to make a flange that connected to the metal piece I cut out of the airbox. And those just with a radiator clamp they just attached there. So I've got 4 K&N pod filters, and then the choke linkage, not sure you can see that, but is mounted just forward. Let's see what else do I have going on here. Here are my fuel lines. I'm now just gravity fed. Before you had a fuel pump that would push the fuel up to the carburetors. Taking a look at a little further back here, and this is one of the really big mods that I did. Let's adjust this here. Okay, so originally your fuel tank sits right here, and then it's covered with plastic body panels. Got rid of all of that, and I fabricated this dual monoshock suspension, for lack of a better name. This is also a CBR 600R rear shock. Bought 2 of them. Just, eBay is where I find a lot of these parts. And then I welded up, I've got a plate here across the frame, built these tabs. This is a L, 3x3 inch L-shaped steel bar, because originally so you can see that originally the shocks would have been here going straight up. You had all this framework coming back, passenger seat back here, and so the load would have been carried further back on the swing arm. And so I wanted to reinforce the swing arm, because now we're putting all the load right here. And actually she rides really comfortably, so that worked out fairly well. Let's see if I can detail the brake for you. I'm just going to pause it real quick. So I hope you can see this. Originally, the rear master cylinder sat up here, so the frame continued up and back. I cut it off, and you have a master cylinder sitting right here. Didn't like the look of that, so what I did was I mounted it underneath the frame. So I don't know if you can see this, but there is a cam. As I push, the cam transfers the power 90 degrees into a master cylinder. Yeah, I don't know if we can see that, but so it's real clean. It's out of the way, and it's just a much better look. Let me pause real quick. All right, so there you can see the master cylinder right there. Okay, well, so looking back here, I'm sure you noticed the Ruffian name on the tires. I've had people ask me, what tires that. This is a Pirelli Root, is the model of the tire, and I chose this tire because it's got a lot of clean sidewall. I did have to sand away some of the raised lettering just to make a smoother surface, but these letters come from a company called TireStickers.com. They do automotive, all kinds of tires. So you go online and you specify what you want. It's a pretty friendly, easy to use website. They have instructional videos on how to make this stuff stick. And you see there, it's a real clean, professional look. Something else I want to point out here is the rear brake caliper. Now, originally on the bike, it sits back here, kind of hanging off the back, because you've got your shock coming up from this mount right here. I didn't like that big clunky piece of metal hanging back there, so I modified this bracket that holds the caliper and used the bolt that holds the shock to keep this in place. So I think that's a nice clean look. Also, you'll see here is a brake line. Now these are DOT approved brake lines by a company called Venhill, and it's a British company. You go online, you have all kinds of choices. What color line you want, what color banjo bolts you want to use, what the angle of the banjo that you want to use. You specify all that out. Took about a week and a half, 2 weeks for me after I placed the order to get the lines in. A nice thing about these lines is that the actual line and the banjo are not fixed. They attach together. So you can get your banjos in place, run your line, and you won't have any twist in the line. So that's a nice benefit. So here's a brake fluid reservoir for the rear brake. Looking at the back of the motor, when I pulled the motor out, it gave me access to the back of the motor, cracked it open. I replaced the stator. The stator, of course, runs to your voltage regulator rectifier. And initially, I didn't replace that. I'm running anti-gravity batteries, and they recommend that you replace the rectifier regulator. If you don't, the warranty is void. I didn't because it seemed to be a good unit, seemed to be working just fine. On my second test ride, all of a sudden the engine cut off. I pulled over and smoke was coming from the battery location. This is where the battery is right here. I made a custom little bracket to hold it. So what had happened was a very high voltage went into the battery, and it fused the battery, and when a lithium-ion battery fails, it fails in spectacular fashion. It is a very violent chemical reaction. Fortunately, I was just rolling to a stop at my driveway. I ran, grabbed a fire extinguisher, ran back to the bike, and it was fully engulfed in smoke, a very heavy chemical smoke. This is the battery right here. These lithium-ion batteries have a lot of energy stored inside of them. And I was so lucky that the bike didn't burn down. I was standing there ready with the fire extinguisher to put any flames out, but after about 15 minutes, she started to fizzle out, and that's what's left. So I called anti-gravity. They said, fill out a insurance form or warranty form. I did, and I explained what I had done. They offered me a replacement battery at half price, which is basically a cost. So really decent of them to work with me on that. I also replaced the starter clutch, which is a really unusual design, and I replaced the hydraulic clutch mechanism, which is also at the back of the motor. All right, so let me go to pause again. Okay, back on. Exhaust, the pipes are stock. I cut them off. These are just aftermarket, little muffler pipes. There is a baffle in there. Baffle's not wrapped. Had to do some welding to make this fit the stock pipe, but I think it's a nice look. Put in a new starter. Did not rebuild the motor. When I bought this bike just 2 years ago, it was a relatively low mileage bike. Had just under 30,000 miles, which for a Goldwing is not a lot. These guys run on the highway all day long, and a lot of used bikes are in the 70, 80,000 mile range. So compression was good on all 4 cylinders. Decided not to crack open a block and mess with that. Parts can be hard to find for these things. So what else do we want to talk about? This is all custom back here, and seat custom made. Let me turn on the ignition, and you'll get to see what the Moto Gadget unit does. So that's your display. So for the electrical, I went with a company called Moto Gadget. This is their M unit basic, which is a really neat device. They also make a blue, which will Bluetooth to your phone, so you can capture all kinds of data on your bike, and I think you can even remotely start it using using your phone rather than a key. All of your circuits are on one side, so all of the load, the positive going to lights, starter, horn, ignition, brakes, turn signals, those would all wire in right here, and just have a little push button, put the wire in, let it go, and it's connected. So, and then all of your controls, your handlebar controls, all your switches attach on this side, and they all go to negative. So once they see negative, completes the circuit, sends power to your load. Positive comes in here, and the mounting spots give it negative. This is a solid state piece. It's made in Germany. It's really well engineered. I love it. They're not cheap, but this is actually for the next build I'm going to do. It's 81 KZ1000. Highly recommend you do this, because the entire wiring harness, I just tossed it and built it off of this. So you do have to figure out your handlebar controls to connect here. Everything is fused internally, so you do away with fuses. It even has a flasher in here, so your turn signals will flash. It's got a built-in alarm system, so once you walk away from the bike, if it sees any motion, you can tell it, turn on the lights flashing at first. If it sees motion again, the horn will go off. You can program all that stuff. Has an accelerometer built into it, so if you're at a red light with your turn signal on, you pull away from the red light, you can tell it to turn off the turn signal after 3-5 seconds, whatever you want to program after you start moving. So pretty good way to go. I really like it. All right, let's pause again. Okay, back on. Well, let's fire this engine up and see how she sounds. My fuel is over here. I've got a nice Pingle fuel petcock. Plumbing that in was actually pretty difficult, but here we go. So let's see if she'll fire up. All right, so, and the way I've programmed this, when I turn off the key, she flashes orange twice, telling you it's shutting down. For the next minute, the running lights will keep running, and then the alarm will be active. So, you know, that's kind of my build here. If you want to see photos of the whole process, badbettygarage.com is my website. It's just me and some of the projects I've done. My son Case, who works for TFL Bike and TFL Classic, he's certainly helped me over the years, and we'll probably link to their site at some point. Website is still under construction, but there are a lot of pictures there that you'll see of the build. So if you have questions, just post those in the comments. I'll try to answer anything I can. I'd like to hear your feedback. I hope you enjoyed the video. I'm going to make a third video of the bike running down the street. We'll fire it up and really get her going. This was a cold start just now. You might have noticed a little smoke, but once the bike warms up, she really runs well. So hope you enjoyed it. Take care.